So I often think that we correct mistakes in all circumstances far too soon than letting people grow from the particular mistakes. That's really hard for all of us. Whether you're a parent, whether you're in education or position of leadership, um, we have a tendency to sort of jump on mistakes and, you know, we blame the person wherever their particular mistake happens, and we have a tendency to blame the individual. We also have a tendency to not focus on working on what to do if a mistake is made, right? And it's really taking away what I often think about is like mistakes are often an extraordinary moment for people to grow, but how we handle them and how we think about them is often very challenging, right? So I have a natural tendency, I'm sure you have the same way, um, is to get emotional from it. Um, but the older I've been getting, the more I'm realizing, like, you know what? It's just a mistake. It doesn't matter. And I try to make this into more of an intellectual exercise. And you might be thinking, like, oh my God, I can't believe you're saying that. Like, mistakes are made and people get hurt. And, sometimes people get killed and, like to the extreme, right? You can automatically think that. But um, if we want to self correct, it's not about getting angry that is super self-correcting. It's the fact of like, yes, understanding that there's some importance that are there, but we have a tendency to over exaggerate importance very quickly. Um, it's just because it's emotional often. Whenever you have a negative thing that happens in your life, you tend to get very emotional. But on the other side, it's like, okay, a mistake has happened. How do we correct? How do we make sure that that continuously doesn't happen over again? We can overreact, and it's easy. And I'm not saying overreaction is necessarily bad. I'm not saying it's easy to understand what is an overreaction, right? It might be proportional to what is something um, that's justified, but it's also thinking about how do we allow for growth and realize like, this is just a part of life often, just to make like silly, stupid things, right? Even in terms of thinking about, um, if you were a judge, for example, if every time you got upset with somebody that, had a speeding ticket or was, condescending, if you were a judge, you would be upset an awful lot and you would have a very negative view of the world. But if you take a step back and say, people are just being super, just super, there's no other way to say this, but just like really like boneheads, right? Like, what the heck are you doing? You're being a bonehead. That's often the case is people just not thinking through things, and just being like really stupid, silly, not stupid in a derogatory sense, but like just silly. Um, just being like total boneheads for for a brief moment. Um, and so how do you get and this is like I think majority of mistakes that are made is often that way. And so you can overreact and get really, really upset, or you can somewhat destigmatize it, um, sort of remove all of the sensitivity that's associated with it and all of your tendency to be just really upset, which that's we all get like that. That's natural. But to take a step back and say, hey, listen, what we're going to do is think about a rational way. And rational, I'm not saying I don't like that term, but in a way of taking a step back and saying, let's just think about this. If you were in the same circumstance, what would you do? What is the appropriate consequence with this? And how might you make sure it doesn't happen again, right? And if you think about it and just kind of plain Jane, like take away all of the, yeah, this is annoying and yeah, it shouldn't have happened and all of that kind of stuff, you begin to realize like, a lot of the stuff is totally controllable. Um, and mostly what is going on is how you're reacting to when a mistake has happened. And your reaction often can make things a heck of a lot worse, right? So thinking about things and like, could you imagine if a judge was like really, really like over the top all the time and just being like, just mad and angry in the face at every mistake there? They wouldn't be an effective judge. It just wouldn't work out that well, right? And I'm not saying like, yeah, sometimes for sure, and that's warranted, but most of the time it's not. It's just people being silly. And so thinking about how do we make sure that people do make mistakes because that is a natural part of living, right? Like allowing people to make mistakes, but then also allowing people to grow from them. And it's removing all of that, like, um, so as Amy Edmondson pointed out many years ago, it's like psychological safety, but I think it's more than that. I think it's just like removing a lot of the emotional responses that you have so that you're able to deal with this, right? If you can openly, if somebody can walk up to you the next time, right? This is the ideal situation. Right? They were a bonehead, right? They just did something stupid, and they realized that most people realize they did something stupid. Um, and then they were able to come up to you next time and say, "Yeah, I'm a bit of a bonehead. Um, I'm gonna fix this myself." They're able to do that, and you have that. You believe that that's going to be the appropriate response. That's the ultimate great outcome, right? If you want ultimately people to own up to whatever they're doing and then recognize that, yeah, I can correct this. I recognize that that was kind of really silly, and then move forward from that, right? Like continuously doing that. If you could sort of get to that moment, that's a joyous moment. But I'm going to tell you this, insanely hard to do because, we all have this tendency to overreact. My natural tendency, so I know a lot of people have a natural tendency to get really upset and angry, like their face gets all red and all that kind of stuff. My natural tendency, and I've always been like this, is to hide, right? And my natural tendency is to not do anything in whenever there's conflict. So if we can get things where on both sides you encourage people to do that, right? Like to speak up and to say, yeah, it's kind of dumb. I was a bonehead, but I'm gonna work on this. If that's your natural tendency, right? So the person that's really energetic and gets red in the face, if you can get somebody to walk up to you after and say, yeah, I was kind of a bonehead, um, and I'm gonna fix this, that's great. That's what you want, right? And then on the flip side, if you're this more natural, like the hide person, um, if you get people to own up and say, I know that you're really uncomfortable about this, but can we talk about this and and really tackle a hard problem? That's a really good thing. And I know that in all of our lives, it is hard to do this, to have these things. It's extraordinarily hard, right? And in all areas of our lives, it's not just like in the working environment, but like your family life and, your spouse or your, boyfriend and girlfriend or any number of these different things, right? It's hard to have these just challenging conversations because we get so tied up to them. But if you want to change and if you want to do extraordinarily well in your life, um, that's the key thing, right? Like thinking about it as like, okay, what are we going to do here? This is dumb. You know, how are we going to handle this and go forward? And I think that's it. Practice it. It's hard, extraordinarily hard. There's many things that I don't like talking about. I'm very honest about that, but that's how we often move forward in a healthy way, is being able to tackle these things that we don't want to tackle. And if somebody reacts poorly to this, it's on them. It's not on you, right? Like, you are actually doing the right thing. So, just keep going, keep trying. All right. Take care and have a wonderful day.